She laughed and called me practice, like our 4 years were a warm-up. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just packed her things and let silence do the talking. My name is Michael. I was born in Ohio, raised in the kind of middle-class quiet where people mow their lawns on Saturdays and wave without stopping to talk. I was 32 when this happened. An electrical engineer by training. Predictable by nature. I liked systems that worked, routines that held. I had never been married. I had never cheated. I believed, genuinely, that commitment was something you protected by showing up every day, even when it was boring. Especially when it was boring. I met Laura 4 years earlier at a friend's engagement party. She was standing alone on the balcony, holding a drink she wasn't drinking, watching everyone else laugh too loudly. I liked that about her immediately. We talked about small things at first. Weather, music, the strange pressure of weddings. By the end of the night, she gave me her number without being asked, like it was a practical decision rather than a romantic one. She was warm in a way that felt intentional. Attentive. Curious. She remembered details. She laughed at things I didn't know I was joking about. After a year, we moved in together. After 3, I bought a ring. When I proposed, she cried and said yes before I finished the sentence. That mattered to me. It still does. The night she laughed at me, it wasn't even an argument. That's what made it worse. We were in the kitchen. Tuesday. Nothing special. She was scrolling through her phone while I loaded the dishwasher. I remember thinking how normal everything felt. The quiet clink of plates. The hum of the refrigerator. Domestic sounds I had come to trust. She said, casually, I ran into Mark today. I froze with a plate in my hands. Mark was her ex. The one she used to talk about with that careful neutrality that never quite hid the history underneath. Oh, I said. How was that? She smiled at her phone. Fine. He asked how I was. We talked for a bit. Something tightened in my chest. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just said, did you tell him we're engaged? She laughed. Not a big laugh. A quick one. Dismissive. You're cute when you get jealous, she said. Then she looked up at me. Really looked. And added, but honestly, that kind of insecurity isn't husband material. It's more like practice. The word hung there. Practice. I waited for her to soften it. To say she was kidding. To reach for me and explain what she meant. She didn't. She went back to her phone like she'd commented on the weather. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much. I felt something shift. Not anger. Something quieter. Like a door closing without a sound. That night, I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling. She fell asleep quickly. She always did. I watched her breathe and tried to remember when I had started believing that love meant absorbing small humiliations without complaint. I told myself she hadn't meant it. That stress made people careless. That weddings brought out strange behaviors. In the morning, she left early for work. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. I took the day off. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things. I sat at the dining table with a cup of coffee and thought carefully, slowly, about patterns, about respect, about how often I had minimized my own discomfort to keep things smooth, about how easily she had laughed at something that hurt me. By noon, I had made a decision. I went to the storage closet and pulled out the cardboard boxes we'd kept from the move. I packed her things methodically, clothes folded, shoes paired, jewelry wrapped. I didn't rush, but I didn't hesitate either. Every object felt suddenly neutral. Just things. None of them heavy with memory anymore. I packed everything that was clearly hers. I left what was shared. The couch. The dishes. The books we both read. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was trying to be precise. When I finished, the apartment felt hollow. Not empty. Clean. I taped the boxes shut. Wrote her name on the top in black marker. Clear handwriting. No flourish. Then I loaded them into my car. Mark lived 20 minutes away. I had been to his place once, years earlier, when Laura and he were still together and needed help moving a couch. I remembered the street. Tree-lined. Quiet. I parked in front of his building and sat there for a moment with the engine off. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I carried the boxes to his front door and stacked them neatly. I didn't knock. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing to explain. When I got back in the car, I felt lighter. Not relieved. Just aligned. Like I had finally done something that matched what I felt. Laura called me an hour later. Where are you? She asked. At home, I said. There was a pause. Why is my stuff at Mark's place? I packed it, I said. You should have everything you need. She laughed again. The same small laugh. Okay, very funny. What's this about? I leaned back against the counter and closed my eyes. You said I was practice, I told her. I took you at your word. She stopped laughing. You're overreacting, she said. I was joking. I know, I said. That's the problem. She started talking quickly then, explaining, backtracking, telling me I was being dramatic, that I couldn't just make decisions like this without talking to her. I listened until she ran out of breath. I didn't make this decision quickly, I said. I made it clearly. She asked if we could talk when she got home. There's nothing left to unpack, I said. And that was true in more ways than one. When she hung up, the apartment was quiet again. But this time, it didn't feel fragile. It felt honest. That was the day everything ended. And the day something else began. Laura came home that night like she was walking into a negotiation, not a breakup. I heard her keys before I saw her. The lock clicked. The door opened. Then a pause, like she expected me to be standing there with an apology already prepared. I stayed on the couch. My hands were folded in my lap. The TV was off. I wasn't trying to make it dramatic. I just didn't want anything between us that could pretend this was a normal evening. She stepped inside and scanned the room. The corners. The hallway where her shoes usually lived. Her shoulders tightened. You seriously did it, she said. I nodded once. She dropped her purse on the chair. Daniel, this is insane. It's not, I said. It's clean. She scoffed. Then she walked closer, stopping a few feet away, arms crossed. You delivered my stuff to Mark, she said. Do you understand how humiliating that is? I do, I said quietly. That's why I did it. Her eyes widened, just slightly. I was joking, she said. You're acting like I cheated. I'm acting like you told me how you see me, I said. She shook her head. You're twisting it. I meant you were being cute. Protective. Flirtation doesn't land like an insult, I said. She softened her voice. So you're just done? Over one sentence. It wasn't one sentence, I said. It was the laugh. And how easy it was for you. She crossed her arms tighter. You're being sensitive. What do you want? For me to never talk to my ex? I asked if you told him we're engaged, I said. So you could feel like you won? Something went cold in my chest. You don't like the idea of me having dignity, I said. She blinked. What? I'm not fighting you, I said. I'm leaving. You're not leaving, she said, confident. I walked past her to the bedroom and pulled out a duffel bag. That's when her tone sharpened. Stop, she said. Don't do this. I folded shirts slowly. You're throwing away 4 years because you can't take a joke? I can't handle contempt, I said. She flinched. Fine, she snapped. Where are you going? Your mom's? A couch. Somewhere I'm not talked to like I'm temporary, I said. She smirked. You're acting like a martyr. That's when I understood. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was offended that I could leave. At the door, she fired off more accusations. I paused with my hand on the knob. I stayed silent last night, I said. That was me communicating. That's punishment, she said. You don't get to call it that just because it has consequences. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door. I didn't hear her cry. I heard the deadbolt lock. I drove to my friend Ryan's place. He took one look at my bag and just asked if I was hungry. Later, at his kitchen table, I gave him the clean version. He listened, then said, You dropped her stuff at her ex's. Yeah. That's cold. It's honest. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. Hurt. Accusatory. One said she'd forgive me if I came home, and we reset. I didn't reply. Around noon, she showed up at my office. When I reached the lobby, she stood there polished and composed. You can't exile me because your feelings got hurt, she said. I'm not exiling you, I said. I'm exiting. She stepped closer. You're proving my point. What point? That you're not husband material. You're insecure. You run. I nodded. Okay. She blinked. That's it. I already said what I needed to, I told her. I walked away. Didn't look back. That night, sitting on Ryan's back steps with a beer in my hand, he asked if I was okay. I don't know yet, I said, but I think I will be. My phone buzzed again. I let it. The first week after I left felt unreal, like I was living inside a version of my life that hadn't finished loading yet. I stayed at Ryan's place longer than I expected. Not because I couldn't afford a hotel or didn't have options, but because his spare room asked nothing of me. No explanations. No negotiations. Just a bed, a lamp, and a door that closed. Laura didn't stop trying at first. The messages shifted tone every day. Anger softened into confusion. Confusion slid into nostalgia. She sent photos I hadn't asked for. Us on a hike. Us at a wedding. A picture of the ring on her hand, taken deliberately at an angle that caught the light. We were good, one message said. You know we were good. I read them once. Sometimes twice. Then I put the phone face down and let the silence swallow the rest. What surprised me wasn't how much I missed her. It was how much I didn't miss the feeling of being managed. Corrected. Quietly evaluated. Work became easier than I expected. I threw myself into projects, stayed late without resentment, welcomed the distraction. People noticed I was quieter, but no one pressed. There's a kind of privacy men are allowed when they look composed enough. 2 weeks after I left, Laura sent the message that changed everything. I ran into Mark again. He asked why my stuff was at his place. I told him you were having some kind of breakdown. I stared at the screen for a long time. That was the first time I felt anger. Not hot, not explosive, just clean and cold. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove back to the apartment. I hadn't been there since the night I left. Walking up the stairs felt strange, like approaching a place that used to belong to someone else. When I unlocked the door, the space smelled different. A new candle. Citrus. Something intentional. She'd rearranged things. Moved furniture just enough to make it feel like she'd already rewritten the story. Like she'd edited me out. I went straight to the desk and pulled out the folder where we kept shared documents. Lease. Insurance. Wedding receipts. I took only what was mine. I left the rest exactly where it was. Laura came home while I was there. She froze when she saw me, like she hadn't expected me to ever cross that threshold again. You didn't tell me you were coming, she said. I'm not visiting, I said. I'm collecting. She laughed softly. Too softly. You always loved pretending you're calm. I didn't rise to it. I zipped my bag and walked toward the door. Daniel, she said, and there was something sharp underneath now. You really think you won here? I stopped and turned. This isn't a competition, I said. That's the difference between us. Her jaw tightened. You humiliated me. You laughed at me, I said. Publicly or privately doesn't change that. She shook her head. You're going to regret this. People like Mark don't stay gone forever. I met her eyes. Neither do people who know their worth. That shut her up. I left without another word. 3 days later, I got an email from her mother. It was long, carefully written, full of phrases like miscommunication and strong personalities. She suggested we meet for coffee, just to talk things through like adults. I didn't respond. What I did instead was something I hadn't planned. I went out with someone else. Her name was Claire. She worked in marketing, but not Laura's kind. Quieter, less performative. We met through a mutual friend who had been watching all of this unfold from a safe distance. The date wasn't fireworks. It wasn't meant to be. It was easy, honest. We talked about books, about work, about how strange it feels to start over in your 30s without meaning to. At one point, she asked, gently, so what happened with your engagement? I thought about lying, about minimizing it, about making it sound mutual. She didn't respect me, I said instead. Claire nodded like that was enough. Like she didn't need details to understand the weight of it. That night, driving back to Ryan's, I realized something unsettling. Laura hadn't broken my trust. She'd revealed something that had been true longer than I wanted to admit. A week later, Mark called me. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Hey, he said, awkward. I know this is weird. I wanted you to hear this from me. I stayed silent. Laura told me you lost it, he continued. That you boxed her stuff up in some kind of jealous spiral. I waited. She also said she still talks to me because I'm safe, he added. Her word, not mine. My grip tightened on the phone. I figured you should know, he said. Because if she did that to you, she probably did it to me, too. I thanked him. Briefly. Hung up. And then, for the first time since all of this started, I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was over. That night, I sat alone in Ryan's spare room. Lights off, city noise drifting in through the window. I thought about the version of myself who would have argued harder, explained more, tried to convince someone to see me differently. That version felt distant now, younger, tired. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And in that quiet, I understood something clearly. Walking away hadn't been the dramatic act. Staying would have been. By the time a month had passed, the story Laura told other people had settled into something polished. I knew because it started reaching me through side channels. Mutual friends who didn't mean to gossip but couldn't help themselves. Co-workers who hesitated before saying her name, then said it anyway. According to Laura, I had panicked. According to Laura, the pressure of commitment had cracked something in me. According to Laura, boxing up her things and dropping them at her ex's place had been erratic, even concerning. She never mentioned the laugh. She never mentioned the word practice. At first, that bothered me more than I expected. Not because I needed to defend myself, but because I could see how easily the truth could be bent if you smiled while doing it. Then something changed. People started noticing patterns. One friend told me Laura had made a joke at dinner about how men fold the moment they're challenged. Another mentioned she'd complained about Mark being emotionally dull not long after telling everyone how supportive he'd been. Someone else said she'd started dating again already, very publicly, very loudly. Each time I heard something new, I felt less need to explain anything at all. The truth has a way of surfacing when you stop trying to carry it. I moved out of Ryan's place and into a small apartment near work. Nothing fancy. Clean lines. Quiet neighbors. I bought a second-hand couch and a table that didn't wobble. The kind of place you choose when you want fewer memories and more space to breathe. The first night there, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and ate takeout straight from the container. No TV. No music. Just the hum of the city outside and the awareness that every decision in that room had been mine. It felt steady. Laura reached out again not long after. This time, it wasn't anger or nostalgia. It was something else. I think we should talk, she wrote. Not to get back together. Just for closure. Closure is a dangerous word. It sounds reasonable, adult, but it usually means one person still wants control over how the ending is remembered. I didn't respond right away. I let the message sit for 2 days. Then I replied with one sentence. I already have closure. She didn't take that well. Her next message was longer. Defensive. Hurt. She accused me of being cold. Of rewriting history. Of acting like I was above everything. I read it once. Then I deleted the thread. Blocking her felt less dramatic than I'd expected. More like turning off a faucet that had been dripping for too long. Claire and I kept seeing each other, slowly. Intentionally. We didn't rush labels. We didn't perform happiness. We cooked simple meals and talked about work stress and childhood memories that weren't curated for effect. One night, sitting across from me with her hands wrapped around a mug, she said, "You don't explain yourself much." I smiled. I used to over-explain everything. What changed? I realized the right people don't need footnotes. She nodded, like that made sense to her. That mattered. A few weeks later, I ran into Laura by accident. It was at a grocery store near my apartment. I turned the corner with a basket in my hand, and there she was, standing in front of the yogurt section like no time had passed at all. She looked good, put together, a little sharper around the edges. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. Not warmly, carefully. "Hey," she said. "I heard you moved." "I did," I said. She glanced at the basket. Still into the boring brands. I almost laughed. Almost. "How have you been?" she asked. "Fine," I said, and meant it. She studied my face, searching for something. Regret. Bitterness. A crack. "You really walked away?" she said quietly. "Yes." She exhaled, like that answer annoyed her. "You know, most people would have fought harder." I met her eyes. "I wasn't trying to win," I said. "I was trying to leave intact." She looked away first. When I walked out of the store, I realized my hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. The past had lost its grip. That night, alone in my apartment, I thought about the man I'd been when Laura laughed at me in that kitchen. The one who'd stayed silent because he didn't know yet that silence could be a decision. I understood now. Silence isn't weakness when it's followed by action. The boxes, the delivery, the walkaway, none of that had been impulsive. It had been precise. And precision, I'd learned, is its own kind of strength. Time didn't rush in after that. It moved the way it always had. Quietly, indifferently, one day at a time. I settled into my apartment the way you settle into a new pair of shoes. Slowly, testing corners, learning where things creaked, where the light fell in the afternoon. I bought a plant I didn't know how to take care of and learned, over weeks, when it needed water by the way the leaves tilted. Work stabilized. My focus sharpened. I started getting noticed again, not for effort, but for clarity. I said no more often. I left on time. I stopped trying to prove I was indispensable. Claire stayed in my life, but she never rushed into it. That became one of the things I liked most about her. She didn't push for declarations or timelines. She didn't test me. She paid attention, and when something mattered, she said it plainly. One evening, months later, we sat on my couch with the windows open, listening to rain tap against the glass. She traced the seam of the cushion with her finger and said, almost casually, "You don't flinch when things are quiet." I thought about that. I used to, I said. I thought silence meant something was wrong. And now I think it means nothing is being forced. She smiled. Not like she'd won something. Like she'd understood. I didn't hear much about Laura anymore. Her name stopped coming up. When it did, it felt distant, like a headline from a city I no longer lived in. I knew she was still telling her version of the story. People like her always do. They need an audience, even when the room has emptied. Once, a mutual acquaintance mentioned she'd said I'd been emotionally unavailable. I didn't correct it. Unavailable isn't an insult when what you're unavailable for is being diminished. The last time I thought seriously about her was unexpected. I was cleaning out an old email account, deleting clutter I hadn't looked at in years. Buried deep was a draft message I'd written the week before the wedding invitations were supposed to go out. A note to myself, really, about compromise, about patience, about how love meant staying calm when something felt off. I read it once. Then I deleted it. Not because it embarrassed me, but because it belonged to a version of me that had done the best he could with what he knew at the time. I didn't blame that man anymore. He had been loyal. He had been hopeful. He had been willing to bend. And when bending turned into erasing himself, he had finally stopped. That mattered. On a Sunday afternoon not long after, I ran into Mark again. This time by accident. A hardware store. Same aisle. We recognized each other at the same moment and stood there. Two men who had both been orbiting the same person without knowing how little gravity she actually had. We exchanged a few polite words. Nothing heavy. Nothing unresolved. As he walked away, he paused and said, "For what it's worth, I don't think you overreacted." I nodded. I know. And I did. Later that night, sitting alone with the lights low, I tried to pinpoint the exact moment everything had changed. Not the laugh. Not the delivery of the boxes. Not even the locked door. It was earlier than that. It was the moment I realized I didn't want to convince someone to treat me well. I wanted it to be natural enough that it never had to be negotiated. Some people call that pride. I call it peace. Claire and I didn't make grand announcements. We didn't rush milestones. We let things settle. We let trust build quietly, the way it should. When we disagreed, we talked without keeping score. When something hurt, it was addressed, not repackaged as humor. One night, much later, she asked me something that surprised me. "Do you ever regret how you handled it?" she said. With Laura. I thought about the boxes, the delivery, the silence. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I regret how long it took me to believe myself." She reached for my hand and didn't say anything else. That was enough. Sometimes people ask me what I'd do differently if I could go back. I tell them the truth. I would stay silent again. Not because silence is powerful on its own, but because it gave me space to listen. To myself. To the part of me that had been trying, quietly, to be heard for a long time. I didn't leave in anger. I didn't leave to teach a lesson. I didn't leave to make a point. I left because I understood, finally, that being chosen starts with choosing yourself. And once you do that, the rest has a way of arranging itself.